And welcome live into the latest edition of the Unpaid Interns. It is Monday, June 8th. Austin Render here with Connor Hines. Connor, how you doing today?
Austin, it's great to see you. Great to be back. As always, Austin, you've been killing it with these guests here on the Unpaid Interns show, and we've just got more good ones coming your way today. Um, you know, for the better or worse, we're getting closer to sports. So
We are. That is
this
a
is
fair
good.
that's a
This is
fair
exciting.
assumption.
Yep. Yep.
Well, let's talk about how we're getting closer. The big story is the NBA. They have officially moved into the 22 team playoff slash a little bit of regular season in Orlando in the bubble. That will start July 31st. My first question to you, Hines, is that the right move by the NBA? Should the 8 teams that got left out be upset that they got left out, or realize they were 15, 20 games back and just get ready for next season? What do you think about the new system?
I mean, when you look at the format, and we've talked about this the past couple weeks on this show, you got to take the lesser of two evils at some point. And I think the 22 team format, when you really dive into the, specifics and the logistics and take a look at how everything, plays out here, I think 22 teams is the right call. And I think, those bottom feeders for now should take the Steve Kerr approach. And, the Warriors have been acting like they've been in the off season ever since the coronavirus, hit us. So I think it's, I think they're doing everything they can. Above all else, the NBA, what has really stuck out to me is that the NBA has been perhaps the most motivated of all the leagues, of all the, professional sports organizations during this time in terms of getting the sport back, not only for the players and for the teams to be able to finish the season, but the NBA recognizes how important this is to the fans too. So I think, anyway, at this point of getting basketball back and going, they're going down to Mickey Mouse Land for a few weeks. So that'll be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it.
Will it be on Disney Channel? That's all I want to know.
That'd
Will
be
we
awesome.
get the NBA on Disney Channel? But are you saying that everyone should start a podcast like Steve Kerr and Pete Carroll, just
Oh,
getting a little podcast going?
yeah, I mean, it seems to be the plan everyone's going with these days. But no, that one's good. I've listened to a couple episodes, but
Steve is in full off-season
he,
mode.
he is in total off-season mode, and the Warriors have been really since
Since
everything
Curry
stopped.
broke his hand, honestly.
Yeah, this is true.
The other news in the NBA is Kevin Durant said 2 days ago he will not play in Orlando. His season is done. There's a lot of talk about, well, now that it's been 3 extra months, these injured players could play. Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant were out. They could play. KD has since axed that, but this could be a big thing around the league. You think
Yep.
about some of the big players. I mean, this is going to be a system where 1 through 8, and even some of those teams outside the playoffs right now, like a Portland Trailblazers, you have CJ McCollum, you have Dame Lillard, and they're getting Nurkic back from injury. That's a complete team all of a sudden. Then you look at the Pacers. Oladipo is going to be fully healthy. This could be huge for teams who are missing some players due to injury.
I think you're going to see this, especially when you have such a role model figure for the league like Kevin Durant choosing to do what he's going to do. He's not going to be alone. And, if you're a sports fan at this point and you still haven't accepted the fact that regardless of when or if we get sports back, it's just going to be different, you've got to come to that realization because, the fact that we're getting to finish the NBA season at all is, a good thing, a surprising thing, some may say. It's just gonna be different, either way. And when you look at this format where essentially, you've got these guys going to a bubble for a few weeks, we've talked about it with baseball and how, if baseball went to Arizona to do the same thing, I mean, do the families come? Is Mike Trout gonna be able to, be there for the birth of his first child. Like there's just so many logistical things going on. You just have to accept the fact that like things like this are going to happen, and it makes sense why. Kevin Durant personally would choose not to, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if more players follow his lead.
I'm just starting to think of others. I mean, Joel Embiid was nicked up throughout the season. This is probably good for him to get healthy. It'll
Oh
be
yeah.
very interesting to see how this plays out. Let's talk a little bit. Let's buzz through some headlines here. Several Alabama football players tested positive for coronavirus. Football is allowed to report. That started a week ago. IU will be reporting in a week. What does this do for college football?
I mean, the past few weeks, I've been, firmly in the camp of, football is going to clearly be the most difficult sport to get back in return, just because you've got so many guys in a locker room sharing a small amount of space. It's just a logistical nightmare, really. And, it's no surprise at all to see that a few players on, Alabama's team have tested positive, and, this is only the beginning little trickle. This is we're going to see this a lot more, over the next few months. So if they can get football on the field and just have games being played, even if it is without fans this fall, it's going to be a big time miracle, because there are just so many guys to take care of and to worry about. And sure, you can maybe continue if guys test positive, but it just makes it that much more difficult when you have that many more people. And we've heard Nick Saban's comments on this even before his players tested positive for coronavirus. There's just, especially in college football, where it seems as if each conference is its own, governing body and own world. It just seems very difficult to get everybody on the same page, regardless, whether it's every coach, every conference. There's just a lot that needs to go right if we want football back. And I don't think anyone should be surprised by that news.
Other news in the NFL, obviously a lot of players are talking about kneeling when the season comes back. If the season comes back, we obviously had all of Drew Brees' comments and his apologies, and it feels like his teammates have kind of had his back here the past couple of days. Donald Trump is doing his best to stir up the pot again in the NFL, but is all of this kind of proving that, you know what, we as, and I'm going to lump everybody, I mean, we as a country did not treat Colin Kaepernick the correct way. I mean, he got shunned out of the NFL for kneeling at the national anthem, and I think this kind of shows that he was kind of in the right there, right?
Yeah, when you look at, history and, important change that has happened over the course of our country, um, it starts with someone doing something, saying something that is considered, near outlandish, or considered, not cool, or considered, revolutionary in some way. And, Colin Kaepernick received so much blowback, and the other players who followed his lead. He received so much blowback in that wake of that. And, to affect positive change, sometimes that needs to happen. And, here we are just a couple years later, with all of this in front of us. And suddenly it makes sense to a lot more people why he would have done that originally. So yeah, I mean, I think Colin Kaepernick should have as good of a chance to play in the NFL as anybody else. I mean, you look at who the New England Patriots currently have slated to quarterback their team this fall.
What do you got with Jarrett Stidham?
And you have to assess, like, sure, Colin Kaepernick hasn't taken a hit in a few years, but remember what he did when he was on the field, when he was on a team, and you got Jarrett Stidham lined up to start with the Patriots. So, I think Kaepernick should, and, I don't know. I mean, he should receive a chance. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he takes that or if he says, you know what, you're only giving it to me now because of what's happening. And
Right,
that'll
right.
be interesting. There's a few other headlines we'll touch on at the end of the show as we rapidly get through a couple there at the end. But we do want to bring in our first guest. It is 11:10, so it is time to do so. Our first guest, the play-by-play broadcaster for ESPN, Westwood One, and Fox Sports Southwest. He played with a slinky on TV. Now I'm going to have to ask him about this because that's in his Twitter bio. And his 3-year-old daughter loves his fist bumps. Ted Emrich joins us. Ted, how are you?
Great to be on with you guys. Really appreciate the invite. I can tell you, I don't think I've ever identified more with the name of a show than this one, Unpaid Interns. I remember those days.
It's what we have to deal with, I guess, right now, especially in coronavirus time. But we love that name. Glad that you can agree with us there. I gotta ask, when did you play with a slinky and catch a fish on TV? Because it's prominently in your Twitter bio.
Yeah, well, you got to come up with some kind of quip for the Twitter bio. And I think I came up with it my first year with ESPN, the 2015-2016 basketball season. It on one hand, we got really creative. I also do the high school basketball package on ESPN, and one of the schools that we featured was the Westtown School in Westchester, Pennsylvania, private school, boarding school. And a few years ago, they most notably churned out the likes of Mo Bamba and Cam Reddish. Bamba, of course, 1 year at Texas, Reddish 1 year at Duke, and both were NBA lottery picks and are in the league today. So the Westtown School can also count among its alumni the inventor of the slinky, believe it or not. And we always love to find ways to have fun on the air. And our producer went out and got a slinky that afternoon and brought it by the table. And so we were on camera, Paul Biancardi and I, and we had fun with it. Jeff Goodman was our reporter at the time. We were at the Hoop Hall Classic in Springfield, Massachusetts, and he tried to set up the gag that you try when you're a kid, right? When you put the slinky at the top of the stairs. He was at the top of the bleachers and tried to get it to tumble down all the way. It didn't work, but we're laughing, so much, just having fun, making fools of ourselves. But what else are you going to do? Hopefully, if we're having fun, the audience at home is having fun too. As for the fish, catching a fish on TV, that was another brilliant idea by our producer, Lori Mancini. We were in Seattle for a rivalry game between Nathan Hale and Garfield. Nathan Hale featured Michael Porter Jr., and they were coached by Brandon Roy, of course, long time with the Portland Trailblazers, Minnesota as well. And he's gone into high school coaching. Just a brilliant story. And of course, I mean, his career was shortened by injury and all of that, just terrible. But he's doing great things with kids. You think Seattle, you think of the public market. And so we go down there during the day, and our producer shoots video. And when we do the bit, we have the full garb with the cap and the apron and everything. And tell you what, it's a lot harder than it looks. They make it look easy. The professionals that catch those fish, as they do it for the crowd, throwing it across the way and putting it in the display. But we had a lot of fun doing that as well.
You're right. You gotta have fun, or else what else are you doing if you're not having fun during the broadcast? What have you been doing? This is a time where you should be doing some of those high school broadcasts. You're not right now. What have you been trying to fill your time with?
Man, it's yeah, you're right. It's crazy when the world just stops spinning in mid March. I was right in the middle of conference championship week, getting ready for two games that weekend with Westwood One, the America East Championship in Burlington, Vermont, and the American Athletic Conference Championship back in Fort Worth the next day. And sure enough, before you know it, it's not just, okay, we're going to play these games without fans. Still get on your flight. No, this event is canceled. Forget even postponed. You thought, okay, maybe they just push this back a little bit. And we know what happened, of course, with the NCAA tournament. And March is a very busy month for me with a lot of college hoops and the big dance. And It's wiped away. What can you do? It's out of your control. And I will say, for me, the summer, it is a lighter time of year. There's the occasional event here and there, doing some of the major championships in golf for Westwood One. Of course, we would have had the PGA last month, the U.S. Open coming up at Winged Foot, but that was all just pushed back. But outside of that, this is the time to really dive into my own work and get better. Just watching my own stuff, watching the work of those that I really look up to and respect, seeing what I can add to my game. You never stop improving. You never stop evolving in this business. No matter if you're just starting 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be. If you're calling Super Bowls, you're still getting better. And those who are the very best at this craft will tell you that. And so if it works for them, it certainly works for me. I'm just trying to get better. So we've stayed productive. Let's put it that way.
Love that. Yeah, I think we can all say the same as well. Me and Austin here, but we've seen the entire sports calendar just slide back a couple months here with your experience, covering high school basketball specifically. And, all of these important, the summertime is an incredibly important time, in terms of not only summer events, but the recruiting schedule being postponed and everything and the like. What do you think that does for, these high schoolers trying to play at big Division I schools? What does that do for college basketball this winter? It's going to have a ripple effect either way.
There's no question, Connor. You're absolutely right. And it's not so much about the top level recruits. You can go on ESPN.com and check out the ESPN 100 or the ESPN 60, the senior, the junior classes, 2021, 2022. You look at the top 10 there, it will not affect them one bit. They are already known commodities. I think of a guy, speaking of Seattle, I think of Paulo Banchero, who is an outstanding player, in the top 5 in the country. College coaches know all about him. The G League, as we know, becoming more and more of a serious option for top level high school players. They certainly know all about him. It's the players that aren't quite on that radar that it affects. Every July, Paul Biancardi and I go to the Peach Jam, and we get to do the finals on ESPNU. And I think of the players that make an impression that entire week, and guys that weren't ranked, guys that don't have stars next to their name, thanks to recruiting services, guys that left a first impression with major D1 college coaches that week. Who is this kid? The late bloomer, the guys that blossom right in front of your eyes. That's who it affects. Not having these events, and of course there are many. Peach Jam, I think, is the absolute best. That's you get all of these teams and hundreds of players that are on courts and game after game after game. That is the pressure cooker of competition, and that's where those talents are revealed. I just feel for those kids who treat that event as the one where they get their shot. They get their shot to shine against the very best, those that are already known. And now you wonder, you worry about high school sports starting on time. Yes, we think we have a good idea about the NFL and to a degree college football, all the money at stake. Are there precautions that will be put into place? Who knows? But you wonder about high school sports all across the country. Football and of course basketball later in the fall and moving into the winter. Is that when they're going to have to make those impressions in front of coaches? And how does the recruiting calendar look? That there are a lot of unanswered questions. You're absolutely right.
So you've done high school football, you said, or basketball since 2015-16. Is that correct?
Yeah. So technically the 2016-17 season was my first. So just wrapped up. Didn't really get to wrap it up. We didn't have our Geico Nationals tournament in New York in early April, of course. But yes, 4 years overall on the high school package for ESPN.
And you've seen a lot of talent. I'm sure you could go on and on about some of the players you've gotten to watch, but maybe give us a name or two that is like, wait, you will always remember seeing them as a high schooler and being like, wow, they are going to be something special.
One name, 4 letters, Zion. It's that simple, man. I mean, 2 years ago, we go to Spartanburg, South Carolina. And Spartanburg Day School was hosting Greensboro Day School, which is a private school powerhouse in North Carolina. And it was Zion Williamson's senior night, his last home game. Let me just set this scene for you. At Spartanburg Day School, which competes in Class 2A, a small classification in South Carolina, the gym seats maybe 500 people. I kid you not. Just this tiny bandbox of a gym. I don't know how they were able to fit, us and our crew all together. I don't know how they pulled it off. That just tells you the level of skills that Lori, Neil Gallo, our entire high school basketball crew have. I have so much respect for them. We're not dealing with Bankers Life Fieldhouse or whatever it's called now, in Indiana every week. We don't have these giant arenas that we're pulling up to, but they made it work. And it goes down to the wire, final minute, Zion with a steal at midcourt, rushes in, he just slams it down. That clinched it. And just getting to talk to him after the game, you knew, obviously, you knew what he was going to become. He was no secret at that time, but just so impressed with him on and off the court. That's the other thing. You get to know these guys a little bit when you watch them. I feel the same way about Cade Cunningham, who might still be headed to Oklahoma State. We'll see with their postseason ban. That's another story for another day. But a lot of these guys, again, I think back to how would you deal with all of this hype, and you introduce social media and you're playing on TV, all of that pressure on you at 16, 17, 18 years old, and they're already handling it like they're pros. Just tremendous respect for a lot of those guys.
That's incredible. And I don't know where you stand on this, but I know, speaking for me and Austin, that's one thing that we love so much about what we do here at Indiana. Because in the same vein, we get to watch these incredible college basketball players move on to the NBA, much in the way that you watched, Zion. So that's an awesome part of everything. In addition to all your college basketball responsibilities, you also have the privilege of being at the Masters every year. What is that like? We all see,
I'm very jealous. Very, very jealous right here.
We all see Augusta National on TV. Austin, big golf guy. What is it like for someone to not only be at the event itself, but to be able to call it? I imagine broadcasting it on radio might be a little different from broadcasting it on TV. I know the television broadcasters are essentially calling the entire tournament off of a screen in their little bunker. Is it the same for radio? I have to imagine that's just such an incredible experience.
It is. I feel really privileged and blessed to be on what is an amazing crew with Westwood One. Have done 5 Masters now as the leaderboard anchor. Listen, so I'm not on the course during the event. I am at the media center in our compound. All that said, you're on the grounds. You still are at Augusta National. And earlier in the week, Tuesday, Wednesday during practice rounds, you walk the course. You actually get to bring a camera. Of course, those are not allowed. Patrons cannot bring those on the course during the tournament, and certainly no cell phones. But you can bring an actual camera. Remember those on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and just to walk the grounds, to walk the course, and when you pull up to Amen Corner and you just see it open up, that I that doesn't get old. Let's say I do it every year now. I'm very fortunate to do so, and just to be a part of that crew. Bob Papa has been the lead guy, has anchored the coverage at 18 with Charlie Reimer. Last year, when Bob had a conflict, how about swinging this? We got Mike Tirico, never heard of him, get to join the crew. And for an event like last year, when you had Tiger Woods and his return to that status, his redemption story, just you never forget that. You never forget being there for moments like that. So you have Kevin Kugler and Maureen Medill at Amen Corner. You have Brian Katrick at 15 and 16, Mark Carnevale at 17. It's an all-star crew, and I'm just glad to be batting ninth on it. Let's put it that way.
I know I told you this when we talked in March, but that my Westwood One appreciation really stemmed when last year, little 500, I was in the infield filming the race, earbuds in, and I had Kevin Kugler and you and Mike Tirico in my ear telling me what's happening at the Masters. So I will always love listening to Westwood One for golf stuff. I know you said this year with Tiger winning last year with Tiger winning the Masters, but do you have any moments that kind of stick out to you? Like, man, that was so cool that I got to be there for that.
The first one that really comes to mind was just last fall, the first NFL game that I got to call. I filled in for Brad Sham on the Dallas Cowboys radio network on a Sunday night in New Orleans, Cowboys and Saints. And just the way it came together, Brad doesn't miss games. He is an Iron Man. He is a legend. He is an icon, and he has been the voice of the Cowboys for more than 4 decades. And he has missed now 2 games in his life. 2. 5 years ago, they called Vern Lundquist to fill in for him, of course, who preceded Brad as the radio voice of the Cowboys. And this time around, they called me. And you talk about an honor. And on top of all of that, there was some symmetry as well. My dad passed away last spring. He was the public address voice of the Cowboys at AT&T Stadium. Did that for almost a decade. He grew up in New Orleans. And the Cowboys, I don't think they knew quite at first just the significance of that for me. But I can tell you that that's a weekend that I will always remember and cherish. Low scoring game, the Saints won 12-10. Yes, you okay, first NFL game, and you've got Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper and Zeke Elliott. You didn't have Drew Brees. He was hurt at the time, of course, with the thumb injury. You have Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, and you're thinking fireworks in the dome. And what do you have? Both offenses honestly stinking it up, and 2 defenses that were playing at the absolute top level. But man, to do an NFL game in prime time and for a team that you grew up watching, it doesn't get much better than that. That's
awesome. That is, I'm sure you'll hold on to that one for a long time. What do you see as the future of if you had to place a guess, where do college sports go here coming up? I mean, you're a guy who wants to and is involved with basketball and high school basketball. And I guess the 2 things in general with the COVID, where are we going? Will it start on time? Will there be fans? And second off, the question everyone's asking, is the G League going to start taking some of these top players that you get to see firsthand with your high school events?
I could tell you from a college basketball perspective, I am smart enough to tell you, I think it's way too early to tell. Are we going to tip off the season with a Champions Classic somewhere with fans, without fans? Will it even be in November with Duke and Kansas and Michigan State? All the teams that you, Kentucky as well, of course. Those four that traditionally open the season. I have no idea. I certainly hope so. I hope that we do have a return to some semblance of normalcy. I think a lot of that is predicated on how the NBA goes. Heard you guys talking about that before you welcomed me in. How does college football start? How does the NFL start? Do we have the second wave that the experts are predicting? I have no idea. And all I can do is hope. And hey, if there are games, you just hope that you are there to do your assignment and do the event justice, no matter the atmosphere or lack thereof. And as it relates to the G League question, listen, they have stepped up their game, literally, with their offers. And there's a reason that a player the caliber of Jalen Green accepted it. You just think 2 years ago, Darius Baisley was a McDonald's All-American, and he was going to head to Syracuse. And he decides at first to go the G League route, and he realizes, you know what, I'm not going to be able to pick my team. I'm going to be in a draft. I could go somewhere. I'm going to be riding the bus. Is this really, he ends up with New Balance and a $1 million internship to prepare for the draft. The G League has come leaps and bounds from then. And now you have Jalen Green, who will be in his home state of California. There's a little more control in that environment. It gives the player, the high school prospect, agency in that decision. And so, yes, of course, more and more players are going to seriously consider that as an alternative to 1 year in college. That's why all of the action in courtrooms that we're seeing, and the NCAA's discussion on player likeness and being able to profit from that. I think of the Olympic model. There's a reason they're still considered amateurs, but they can take advantage of their status and they can do endorsements. And, listen, there are questions that have to be answered that are certainly above my pay grade there. What does that do for the rest of the team, and not just the Zion Williamsons of the world, who can absolutely capitalize on that. But you need to extend an olive branch in some way. College basketball, let's say this, though, to finish. College basketball will still survive. Listen, they went through the era of Kevin Garnett and Kobe Bryant and so many others jumping directly to the pros. Would you love to see them in the college game? Absolutely. But you're going to see the college game still flourish. Is there going to be a lot more Cassius Winston types that stay 4 years and they develop year after year that aren't quite ready for the NBA after one season? Sure. The college game will still be special. It's just going to be a little different.
Well, that's a great way to wrap it up. Ted, thanks so much for joining us. Great insight, great stories. I wish you the best of luck here. Hopefully we're going to get some sports back soon, and hopefully your daughter never grows out of your fist bumps. I really hope that for you.
Oh, I know. I'm dreading the days. Dad, the teenage years, that's a long way away.
You're
She's
embarrassing me.
She's 3. Why are you talking? Can't you just text me? I hope that never comes. I know it will. She's 3.5. I don't think I have to worry about that for a few years. But thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. Take care, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Ted.
See ya.
Good guest there with Ted Emrich, talking all things basketball, all things golf, and it is time to now bring in our next guest. He's even got his title there on his screen. He is Dean Linke, play-by-play broadcaster for Big Ten Network, the voice of North Carolina FC and North Carolina Courage. Dean, you look like you're in the soccer bunker there. How's it going?
Yeah, doing great. Just up in the office right now. Great to be with you guys. Wish it was under different circumstances, obviously unprecedented times. My hearts and prayers go out to all those affected, not just by the COVID, by the social injustice, but great to take a break from that and be with you guys. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, we got to do it in person back in what was that, October or so, but we'll take a Zoom call. It works. What have you been kind of filling your time with the past few months without sports? You're a guy that you have one of the busiest schedules I've seen in terms of sports. So what are you doing now without that?
Yeah, it was tough. I'm not going to lie. I do got to give Fox a whole lot of credit. They honored all games through the middle of April, which was quite a few games. I had a ton of games in April and May. I do all those championships for the Big Ten Network, but definitely not a time knowing what other people are going with to go with woe is me. Luckily, I've been able to do a lot of webinars for United Soccer coaches, almost 2 a week, that were really successful. I still do the weekly podcast. I've done several projects for the Big Ten Network. One involves Andrew Gutman and Sasho Soroski breaking down the play that I think won him the Mac Herman Trophy. You guys are going to love that because it's Gutman on one side, Sasho on the other, him slicing and dicing 9 players. So that was pretty neat. I did something with Missy Maharg, Linnea Gonzalez, and Emma DeBurdine with the Maryland field hockey team. And I did another Big Ten Network soccer one that's going to be coming out shortly. A little later today, I've got a Zoom call for the Big Ten Network with Shaka Daly. Obviously as a Black coach, one of the few Black coaches, looking forward to hearing his message of responsibility for all of us, right? No matter what our color is, we all got to play our role for sure. So I've been busier than I thought I was going to be, but man, I miss being in the booth, guys. I just miss it so bad,
Yeah, I think we can say the same safely here. And even then, in the middle of all of this, you're still finding ways to keep busy. So I love to hear that. Really looking forward to that Gutman thing. That sounds awesome. You mentioned field hockey there and some of the other non-revenue sports that you have the pleasure of covering with Big Ten Network, whether it be softball or field hockey or anything else. You also have a close relationship with a lot of these coaches and athletes, having covered the Big Ten for as long as you have. What do you think? Where do we go from here? Not only with sports in general, but especially those, smaller, more tightly knit sports that don't have maybe as big of a budget. This fall, I know Indiana softball, they extended the offer to their seniors, and they're all taking that offer to come back for a 5th year. But not everyone's going to have that luxury. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of unanswered questions right now, a lot still up in the air. But you got to think we're going to see some changes in some capacity to some of those smaller sports in the Big Ten.
Yeah, already we've seen, of course, soccer is my number one. We've seen 2 prominent men's programs drop, Cincinnati and App State, and there may be more that fall by the wayside. I certainly hope not. We'll be keeping an eye on that. I do feel like, knock on wood, that the job that the 3 of us do, and that is to, bring those pictures and movements to life, even if there's not a crowd, I think we'll still be there. So hopefully we'll have a chance to help those at home that want to see, their kids and grandkids and friends and neighbors play in these Olympic sports, which are also important. I wish I had the answer, Connor, on what's going to happen. I do think for sure in the fall, we're going to see shortened seasons. Make no mistake, the captain obvious, and your previous guest probably already said it. If college football has any interruption, that will just affect everything, right? That's simple math because that's the revenue generator, just kind of the way the end of the basketball season affected what we were doing as well into the spring. So I'm not totally sure. I wish I had those answers and many, many more, but like you, Connor, I'm going to have to sit back and wait and just hope that everything's okay. Hope that another wave of COVID doesn't come through, even though they are anticipating it. The latest discussions I'm hearing, particularly for college soccer, is a shortened schedule, get it down to 14 games, localize it, play only conferences, maybe eliminate a conference tournament and still try to crown a champion, but crown one earlier, maybe right around Thanksgiving. That could be the scenario we're looking at. But again, that's just hearsay too. So don't take that to the bank.
Well, we've heard Coach Todd Yeagley from IU talk about the potential of making soccer a spring sport and almost wrapping it around the calendar year. Is this something that could possibly provoke some change or at least some thinking about, well, if we push it to the spring, that might buy us some more time? Is this something that could kind of start something for that?
Well, make no mistake, that's been percolating, and that has been discussed on my weekly podcast where we do cover college soccer probably 50% of the time, Austin. So that is a discussion. The overall, what they're calling 21st century model, has been put aside because right when they were getting ready for the legislation and the approval, COVID broke out and they just said, no, we'll put it aside. But because of that initial legwork, your question is relevant. And it makes sense that Todd, who's been a key part of it, mentions that if this fall season is entirely interrupted, then yes, they'll look to try to figure something out for the spring, which, pardon the pun, but it could springboard the notion the following year or maybe a year after to get this full calendar year soccer season going. But make no mistake, COVID shut down everything, including those talks.
Well, we know that you have covered a lot of sports in your time, a lot of soccer, a lot of field hockey, like you said, softball, all those sports. Do you have any stories that stand out to you? Like, man, it was really cool that I got to be there for that event, for that moment.
Yeah, I got a few stories. I started out, I kind of created my own job. I think I told you this story. I knew I wanted to be a broadcaster my whole life, but I hedged at Ohio University, got an internship with US Soccer, rode the wave of just incredible moments. The USA qualifying for the World Cup for the first time in 40 years. You guys weren't even born. The US women, the first World Cup over in China. I was with them. The 92 Olympics that featured Steve Snow, one of the best ever to play at Indiana. The guy scored a goal, I think, in almost every Olympic qualifier game, and then the World Cup. But I really wanted to be a broadcaster. So when Colorado was the last team named, they said, hey, we want your experience. I said, well, I'll come help you, but I want to call the games. So I became their voice. And in the second year, we went from worst to almost first. We made it to the MLS Cup final. And to me, one of the greatest moments as a broadcaster was being in the locker room after beating Dallas in the Western Conference Finals, where you're allowed to celebrate, right? Like you, just like the Chicago Bulls celebrate winning the Eastern Conference. I'll never forget that excitement of winning a championship with a team that you're with, you're a part of, you're the voice of. That will always go down as one of the best. I don't take for granted any of the Big Ten championships I call for all the sports. I've had a lot of great moments. In fact, Maryland and Indiana in a Big Ten championship at Maryland. Maryland happened to win that one, but they kind of go back and forth. And even the Andrew Gutman game will go down as one of the most incredible games because it was like a Desmond Howard moment when he, by the way, we did count it. It was 9 Maryland players that he beat. And, Andrew Gutman is not shy, by the way. But let me rephrase that. He's a little bit shy, but he's doesn't lack in confidence. How about that? Because when we did the thing, we're like, Andrew, what are you thinking? And his comment, you'll hear it when it comes out, I think next week, was, AJ Palazzolo, just get out of my way. So, all the moments are great. I'm not going to lie to you. I think I'm like both of you guys. I treat every game like it's the Super Bowl because I know it's important to those players. It's important to those players' parents. So I embrace every game. Those are a couple special stories. One other big moment was being on the field when the USA beat Colombia. Again, you guys weren't born, but in the 1994 World Cup, Colombia was picked to perhaps win the World Cup, and we beat them at the Rose Bowl in front of 100,000 people. And I was in charge of all the media. That was pretty neat. Big time moment in soccer for sure.
I remember calling that Andrew Gutman goal and just being in awe, relatively new to having, watched Big Ten soccer, college soccer. I can't remember the last time I saw something quite like that. That was incredible. And, all three of us can say we've been incredibly privileged to cover Indiana soccer. We know your love for the Todd father, your love for that program, and just everything that they have accomplished.
Well,
I'm sure you got to watch Worth the Wait, the documentary that aired recently on Big Ten Network. Awesome. That was incredible as well. Given all of the history with Indiana soccer and sort of this new era that the program is jumping into, we got to talk to you about it on our Hoosier Network podcast last fall. I mean, where do you see this program in particular going this fall? Hopefully we do have that season, when the school year rolls around. But this is kind of a new era in more ways than one for Indiana soccer. I mean, the team was incredibly young, and we still saw what they were able to do, in the Big Ten tournament and so on. I mean, it's such an exciting time, I think, and it always has been, but it's going to be that much more, I think.
Yeah, it is. And I think I love that question because it is a different time, and you are seeing some players leave early now that come to Indiana. But at the end of the day, and a lot of times I just try to simplify things. When I look at Indiana, I think of one word, and that word is character. They bring in kids with high character, high moral values. And because of that, they can handle any kind of turnaround because the next kid up, and I don't know if it's the parents of these kids or if it's just the magic sauce of the Godfather trickling down to Todd Yeagley, but to a man, I think you guys know this. You talk to these kids. I mean, I've said it before with you guys. Like when you talk to Jack Mayer, it's like talking to a 50-year-old, right? And I'm the 50-year-old, wait, which one's the 19, 20-year-old kid? When you have that kind of character at that kind of level, you can deal with adversity and you can get through it and you can come out still a rising star. So I think they're going to be fine. I did want to say, going back to the Andrew Gutman thing, I did think Sasho Sorosky was magnanimous for coming on because he watched his team slice and dice. You guys will love watching it though, because he did say, and it was the same time The Last Dance was going on. You guys had to be watching that, right? Was that awesome or what? Like that was brilliant. Well, he did say, hey, you heard the Jordan rules at the College Cup. We indeed had the Gutman rules. And if you go back and look at that semifinal matchup, Andrew Gutman was not able to be Andrew Gutman because that was their game plan. Shut down Andrew Gutman and Indiana won't be able to beat us 3 times in a row. And they did that. But Indiana has so much character, Connor, it doesn't matter. They can lose their whole team. Todd Yeagley, Kevin Robeson, Danny O'Rourke, they're still going to challenge to win a Big Ten, still going to challenge to win another star every single year. Mark it down.
Well, now I got to know your thoughts on Worth the Wait. I'm sure you watched the documentary and the Todd. You love the Todd Father, the Godfather. What were your takeaways from Worth the Wait?
Well, first of all, let me just say I'm blessed and lucky that 6 degrees of separation. Sometimes I feel like it's 3 for me. The guy who produced it, Tucker Gregg, lives in Durham. I'm here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. So I actually went over and met him and did a screening with him. And he and I have been in touch because he wants to do one on the UNC women's soccer team. So I felt lucky there to see it even maybe before you guys saw it, which is rare to be ahead of Connor Hines in anything. You know what I mean, Austin? But I did get to take a look at it. I thought it was awesome. I know all those guys really well, Donnie Rawson, and I've been around them because a lot of those coaches are with United Soccer Coaches. George Perry, I went to Europe with in 2014, spent a month over there with him. So all of those guys, knowing them forever, and then them getting the opportunity to recognize arguably the greatest men's soccer coach of all time, it was only fitting. And props to the Big Ten Network for saying we're going to air it, because that was the biggest thing, right? Where are you going to air this thing? And now it's out there. It's on the Big Ten Network. People are seeing it and talking about it and realizing that the history of college soccer goes way, way, way back because of people like, can I say it? The Godfather, baby.
You have to say it. That's your thing. Well, and now I'm losing my train of thought. Oh, yes. The last double-double for Indiana that feels like forever ago, but was only probably 7 months ago or so when they knocked off Michigan, and that game goes to penalty kicks. I mean, when you're a broadcaster and the game's going to penalty kicks, I mean, what are you thinking? That's got to be a moment that you're ready for and that you've prepared for.
Yeah, great question. I feel like I always try to be in the moment. I just saw on Big Ten Network, a lot of people are blowing me up because they're playing old volleyball and gymnastics and softball and lacrosse. And I think people are getting tired of me. So I apologize to all of them, but they just aired a commercial recapping that game on BTN. They encapsulated in a 30-second commercial, which I will tell you, going back to your original question, all your questions are great. I love being on with you guys. You said, what's a big moment for me? Actually, one of the biggest moments for me was in the spring of 2007. I was sitting down in, my man cave, and I was watching the Big Ten Network. And in 2007 is when the Big Ten Network launched. And you guys are how old now? Are you like 2 yet? How old are you guys?
We would have been 7 or 8
Yeah,
then.
see, eight years old. So when you were
I remember it though.
my biggest moment happened because there was a massive basketball game going on. They went to break. And during the break, they played a recap of Indiana, Ohio State in the first ever championship on the Big Ten Network for men's soccer. Ohio State ended up winning that game and went on to the national championship game. So what a great year. You know, you had Michigan losing on the opening day in football of the Big Ten Network. And really the Big Ten Network has never looked back. So anyway, just seeing that commercial, and then the other day seeing the commercial with the Michigan goalkeeper and then Roman for Indiana and the big save and Indiana winning it. Yeah, you always just got to be in the moment, Austin, like you guys are. You got to feel it. You got to bring that energy. And, you know, for me, it's easy. And every time I see you guys, it brings a smile to my face. But I'm always out there just like you guys, kind of walking a little bit higher because I love what I do.
Well, it brings a smile to our face anytime we get you on the podcast. Dean, I know you got to go talk to Shaka Daly, but thank you so much for joining us here, talking some soccer and reliving some great moments. And hopefully we'll have some soccer to call here in a couple of months.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I love being on your show. So anytime, and I want to flip it sometime during college soccer season, have you guys on my podcast. Okay, that's a deal?
Absolutely.
All right, thanks,
Virtual
Connor. Thanks,
handshake
Austin.
right here. All right, see you later, Dean.
Thanks, Dean.
Thank you.
Two fantastic guests today, Connor. Ted Emrich shedding some light on high school sports and on the Masters, and Dean Linke shedding some light on what probably
Everything.
the busiest man that I think I've ever met in my life, Dean Linke. He is out there doing it every day, and it's got to just be crazy for him to not be doing it every day. And I'm sure his family loves having him home, and he loves being home with his family. But man, it is crazy to see a guy like him bunkered down in his soccer room there.
Yeah, he's electric every time we get to talk to him. But you know, for someone, and I mean, we've all, you know, come to these realizations at different times over the past couple months, but you know, it's one thing to say that sports from an entertainment perspective is gone. It's another to say that, you know, for so many people whose livelihoods, you know, revolve around just having games to cover, you know, it's a big lifestyle change for a lot of people these past couple of months. And obviously everybody's lives have changed in one way or another, but hopefully we have a Big Ten soccer season, and hopefully we get to catch up with Dean again sometime soon in person, because he's too good to be off the air for too long.
Absolutely. Well, let's hammer through a couple more headlines. Sports are actually starting to happen, which is giving us a few things to talk about. This was notable. I saw it pop across my ESPN headlines the other day. Scott Dixon in IndyCar. IndyCar is back. Scott Dixon won the race, first race of the year. He has now won a race in 18 straight seasons. 18. Wow. That is incredible.
I didn't know that.
That's just mind-boggling. Any sport. Like,
that is.
It's just insane.
How long has he been around? Because I know this is Tony Kanaan's last run of it this season.
Let's do a quick little Google search.
Scott
Dixon. Yeah,
you know,
he's 39 years old. He's from Brisbane, Australia.
I got to watch a little bit of the Genesis 300 down at Texas, and you know, I think much in the way we're excited to just get anything back in any capacity.
He started in 2003. So that's every
year.
That's every year since he started. That would have been
that's remarkable.
2020.
That's remarkable.
Won a race. 18.
And the IndyCar community, as I've quickly learned here over the past couple of weeks, is, you know, a tight-knit group. They all stick together. It's small in some regards, but
he won the Indy 500 2008. So he's an Indy 500 champion and a champion 18 straight years. Just felt like that was worth noting because that's impressive.
Yeah, and I will say, I mean, watching that race, it felt, and even though you see, you know, the interviews taking place 6 feet apart with the masks on and the whole bit, but just watching that race, you feel a little bit normal. Just watching a live sporting event with, you know, real people doing real things. I don't know. It was just a nice little nice little touch, nice little thing to see. And, many drivers have admitted that IndyCar is not going to happen forever without fans. They're just that important. And I think we can say that safely about many, many sports. But really enjoyed watching that.
Well, from friend of the pod, Zach Kiefer, he tweeted that the Colts are tentatively scheduled to start training camp on July 28th. So that'll be something to watch. That's just a date floating in the air now. But that's something at least to think about for the NFL, who has been rather unbothered by the coronavirus. I know they've had to do everything virtually, but their schedule's still going.
Right.
And they're still going along as planned. They haven't missed games. They haven't missed the draft. They haven't missed workouts. They're kind of fine right now. And it'll be interesting to see if that stays the same. But late July is when it looks like training camps could begin. In the MLB, Jeff Passan just tweeted 5 minutes ago, every day that goes by without an agreement, the length of the season drops. And after hearing from players already about this proposal, the prospect of a 48-game season is looking likelier.
Wow.
They've been asked to respond by Wednesday, according to sources.
Wow.
So the MLB is heading the wrong direction of every other sports league. What do you think about a 48-game season?
Sheesh.
You're a big baseball guy, Mr. Padre.
Gonna play an NFL schedule here.
Yeah, pretty soon it's just going to be 10 games.
Right. I wouldn't be surprised if they obviously spread them out a little more, so you only had a couple games a week. But wow,
it's crazy because the MLB could work the easiest. I get it.
Yeah.
Fans are important for revenue, but for the sport itself, you can get away with no fans in baseball, I think.
I agree.
I think they make the least amount of home field advantage difference than any other sport. I think football, it's obvious how the fans make a difference. Right. Basketball, it's obvious. Even in golf, you're going to hit balls now and you're not going to be able to find them because there are going to be no groups of fans to stop it from rolling into the trees. But in baseball, I feel like, there are times where the crowd can really help. But I think baseball is a sport that could get away with it.
I think they could definitely get away with no fans. That's just not the biggest issue right now. It's just
the biggest issue is the money.
Coming to an agreement. But I agree with you on that end. I think, at least temporarily, anything can survive with no fans. And, it's hard to believe that there was a time on the very last night of the Big Ten tournament up in Indianapolis where I literally thought that no sports were better than sports with no fans. But,
wrong.
Very, very much so. So I think everybody's in that camp, more or less. And, from a financial perspective, it's going to be a big economic hit either way, to baseball or anything else. But that hit will be mitigated a little bit if you get the sport back at least. So obviously that's the hope, but revenue. What was that?
At least generate the TV revenue, right? And get something going,
right? So we'll have to see, but I don't know. It's hard to be hopeful about baseball.
Last sport to hit on. The NHL is making progress as well. I don't have it in front of me here. I'm going to try and pull it up. We shouldn't completely ignore the NHL, but I think they're moving towards a July start. They've got their playoff system ready to go. It looks like it will be re-bracketed after every round. So that'll be it'll be certainly a very different playoff for the NHL. The final sport is the PGA Tour, which is back. This is actually a tournament week for the first time since March 9th. So very excited as a golf fan myself. The CBS Sports Kyle Porter, it's going to be one of the best fields of the year. It feels like a major championship type field because it is a major championship type field. Like literally the best players in the game would never play in the Charles Schwab Challenge But this week they are going to play in the Charles Schwab Challenge because everybody wants to play golf right now. I believe it's a 156 man field. So it's going to be packed. It might be 144, but that's a good segue to our guests on Wednesday. We will have Chris Solomon of No Laying Up. He's going to be on. It's a big PGA Tour podcast sponsored by Callaway. He'll be talking about the restart for the PGA Tour and kind of his podcast and how he's been able to keep things going without golf. And then Kevin Bowen of 1070 The Fan talking Colts and Pacers with us on Wednesday as well. So a couple of really different but fun guests coming on the show on Wednesday as we continue to try and spread out the love for all the different sports. And we got we have coming up next week, Scott Powers, NHL writer, will be joining us. So I promise we are not ignoring the NHL. I promise it is coming. So if you are on this show, watching this show for the NHL, we will have you covered. I promise. It's going to happen. We had to get Scott's schedule worked out, but he's coming on Monday. So Connor, any last words here on a very insightful episode today?
No, very insightful. And, bottom line, each week we do this, we're getting a little bit closer. So baby steps.
Well, that'll do it here for our Monday edition of Unpaid Interns. Again, Wednesday, it'll be me and Tamar talking with Chris Solomon and Kevin Bowen, excuse me. So that'll be our two guests on Wednesday. Make sure we'll be back at 11 o'clock right here on the same YouTube page you watch us on every day, or on podcasts, wherever you get them on Unpaid Interns, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Spreaker Podcasts, wherever you want to find us, we will be there for you. So we're excited. Thanks again to Ted Emrich and Dean Linke for joining us today. For Connor, I'm Austin saying so long from Unpaid Interns.